Most people think they're stuck because they lack motivation. But the real reason is much harder to accept. In the next 70 minutes, you'll hear the brutal truths most people avoid about discipline, comfort, distraction, and why your life isn't changing. If you're ready for honesty, keep watching. There's something you need to hear, and you probably won't like it. Nobody is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your friends, not the government, not your boss, not some mentor you're waiting to discover. Nobody. And the sooner you accept that, the more powerful you become. Because most people are living in quiet delusion. They're waiting for the right time, motivation, for someone to notice their potential, waiting to feel ready. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Life doesn't reward potential. It rewards ownership. And ownership begins the moment you stop expecting rescue. You think someone will recognize your hard work. But what if they don't? Deserve has nothing to do with reality. The world is built around leverage. If you don't build leverage, you become replaceable. And this is where most people panic. Being responsible is terrifying. It means your failures, your procrastination, and your wasted time are yours. No villain, no conspiracy, just choices. Deep down, many people don't actually want freedom. They want comfort. They want excuses. Because if nobody is coming to save you, then that means you have to act. You have to fail publicly. You have to discipline yourself when no one is watching. That's why so many stay stuck. They scroll, they complain, they wait, and years pass. Meanwhile, the few who accept this truth early, they move differently. They don't ask, who will help me? They ask, what can I control? They don't wait for motivation. They build systems. They rely on structure. Once you understand that no one is coming, you stop negotiating with yourself. You act faster. And here's the paradox. When you stop expecting to be saved, that's when mentors show up. Self-rescue creates momentum. Momentum attracts support. But support never comes first. Responsibility does. Let's be honest. You already know what you need to do. The habits you should stop. The problem isn't ignorance. It's avoidance. And avoidance feels safer than ownership. But safety is expensive. Every day you delay action. You pay with time. And time doesn't refund. Nobody is coming to fix your body, your bank account, your mindset. The decision, that's always yours. Some will feel empowered. Others will feel attacked. And that reaction reveals everything. Are you waiting for permission to be chosen? Because the people who build powerful lives choose themselves first. They become the solution. And that shift, that internal shift, changes everything. You don't need to be perfect or fearless. You just need to stop expecting rescue. You don't rise because someone saved you. You rise because you decided no one would. You stop being a spectator in your own life. You become the architect. That's where real power begins. If this made you uncomfortable, good. Awareness is the beginning of control. Subscribe if you're ready. Motivation feels powerful. When it hits, you feel unstoppable, clear, certain, driven. You tell yourself, this is it. This is the moment everything changes. You set goals. You make plans. You imagine a different version of yourself. And for a short time, it feels real. Then it fades. Not because you're weak. Not because you lack potential. But because motivation was never meant to last. That's the brutal truth. Motivation is emotional, and emotions fluctuate. They rise and fall depending on sleep, stress, environment, mood, and even weather. Yet most people build their entire life strategy around a feeling that is biologically unstable. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. And while they wait, nothing changes. You don't struggle because you lack motivation. You struggle because you depend on it. Motivation is a spark, and sparks are temporary. They ignite quickly, they burn intensely, and then they disappear. If your progress depends on something that disappears, your progress will disappear with it. Think about your own life. How many times have you felt deeply motivated? After watching a video, after a failure, after a breakup, at the beginning of a new year, on a random night where everything suddenly felt clear. In those moments, you feel powerful, but possibility without structure collapses. Because motivation creates intention, it does not create systems. And systems are what build results. Here's something most people don't understand. High performers are not constantly motivated. They are constantly structured. They don't wake up asking, do I feel driven today? They wake up knowing what is scheduled. Their behavior is not dependent on emotion. It is dependent on design. When action is tied to mood, it becomes optional. When action is tied to structure, it becomes inevitable. Motivation says, I'll start when I feel ready. Discipline says, I start because it's time. That shift alone separates inconsistent people from consistent ones. Most people confuse intensity with progress. When motivation is high, everything feels urgent and dramatic. You feel like you're transforming. But intensity is not consistency, and consistency is what changes your identity. Motivation creates bursts. Consistency creates identity. Identity determines behavior. If you only act when motivated, you become someone who acts inconsistently. If you act regardless of mood, you become someone reliable. Reliability builds self-trust. Self-trust builds confidence. Confidence builds momentum. And momentum eventually feels like motivation. That's the irony. Real motivation is a byproduct of action, not the cause of it. You've been taught the opposite. You've been taught to wait for inspiration, to wait for clarity, to wait for confidence. But clarity is created by action. Confidence is built through repetition. Inspiration follows progress. The brutal truth is this: motivation is not rare. It's irrelevant. What's rare is structure. Structure means clear behaviors, defined time blocks, non-negotiable standards, reduced choices, predictable execution. Most people fail not because they lack desire, but because they lack structure. Everything feels flexible. Everything feels optional. Everything feels negotiable. And negotiable actions invite procrastination. You don't negotiate brushing your teeth. You don't negotiate showing up to work. Why? Because those decisions were made long ago. The debate is gone. Decision fatigue disappears when identity takes over. You don't need motivation to do what you identify with. You need motivation for things that conflict with your current identity. If you don't see yourself as disciplined, disciplined actions feel forced. If you don't see yourself as consistent, consistency feels unnatural. So you rely on emotional spikes to temporarily override your identity. But once the spike fades, you return to baseline. That's why motivation fails you. It does not rewire identity. It temporarily overrides it. Identity is rewired through repetition. Repetition requires structure. Structure requires commitment independent of mood. Your brain is designed to conserve energy. If every action requires an emotional debate, you will lose that debate because the brain prefers comfort. Comfort is predictable. Growth is uncertain. Motivation gives you the illusion of overcoming comfort, but without structure, comfort wins long term. You don't need more motivational content. You need friction removed from execution. Reduce decisions, pre-plan actions, schedule behaviors, make actions automatic. When behavior becomes automatic, emotion becomes irrelevant. And when emotion becomes irrelevant, consistency increases. Look at any area of your life where you're consistent. You're not constantly motivated there. You're simply conditioned. Conditioning beats motivation every time. The problem is most people are addicted to emotional intensity. Motivation feels good. It feels dramatic. It feels transformative. Structure feels boring. Repetition feels unexciting. But boring compounds. Excitement burns out. Success is usually built in boring seasons, in quiet repetition, in scheduled effort, in days that don't feel special. Motivation makes you feel like you're changing your life. Structure actually changes it. Here's another uncomfortable truth. If you constantly need motivation, you probably lack clarity, because clarity eliminates negotiation. When you know exactly what you're doing and when you're doing it, there's no emotional argument. Ambiguity creates hesitation. Hesitation invites delay. Delay erodes self-trust. And once self-trust erodes, you start labeling yourself lazy. But you're not lazy. You're structurally unprepared. You don't have a system that functions when you don't feel like it. That's why motivation becomes a crutch. It compensates for weak structure. But you don't build strength by leaning on crutches. You build strength by designing systems. This is exactly why I built the Motivation Blueprint. Because motivation isn't something you wait for, it's something you engineer. You design your environment. You reduce friction. You define identity-based habits. You remove emotional negotiation. You create automatic behavior. When you understand how to build systems instead of chasing feelings, consistency stops feeling impossible. Motivation becomes optional. Action becomes predictable. And predictable action builds predictable results. You don't need to feel unstoppable. You need to be structured. You don't need more hype. You need fewer decisions. You don't need emotional certainty. You need behavioral clarity. Motivation is temporary, structure is permanent, emotion is unstable, systems are reliable. If you want stable results, you need stable behavior. And stable behavior is built in boring repetition, not emotional spikes. Stop waiting to feel ready. Start acting on schedule. Momentum will follow, confidence will follow, and eventually motivation will follow too. But this time, it won't control you. You'll control it. Built beyond comfort. Growth begins where comfort ends. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. Comfort feels good. That's the problem. You wake up and reach for your phone. You sit instead of move. You avoid the difficult conversation. You delay the uncomfortable decision. And every small act feels harmless. But comfort compounds. And so does weakness. We've been sold the idea that life should feel easy. That if something feels hard, it's wrong. That discomfort is a signal to stop. But discomfort is not danger. It's growth. And the more you avoid it, the more fragile you become. Let's be clear. Weakness doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, quietly, through small negotiations. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. It's not that serious. One more scroll. Comfort doesn't destroy you dramatically. It erodes you subtly. Every time you choose convenience over effort, your tolerance for effort shrinks. Every time you avoid friction, your resilience decreases. And over time, what used to feel manageable starts to feel overwhelming. That's how weakness forms. Not through trauma, through softness. Modern life is engineered for comfort. Food delivered instantly. Entertainment unlimited. Climate-controlled environments. Endless digital stimulation. You don't have to struggle for survival. But comfort without challenge creates stagnation. Your mind and body adapt to whatever you repeatedly expose them to. Expose them to difficulty, and they become stronger. Expose them to ease, and they become dependent. This is biology. Muscles grow under resistance. Attention grows under focus. Confidence grows under pressure. Remove resistance, and growth stops. But here's the uncomfortable part. You say you want discipline. You say you want success. You say you want confidence. But you structure your life for comfort. You sleep in. You avoid hard work. You distract yourself from responsibility. You escape discomfort the moment it appears. And then you wonder why nothing changes. Comfort is seductive. It feels like safety. But comfort is just delayed regret. Because every avoided challenge comes back later with interest. Avoid the gym now, and your health declines later. Avoid hard work now, and your options shrink later. Avoid difficult conversations now, and your relationships weaken later. Comfort doesn't eliminate difficulty. It postpones it. And postponed difficulty grows. The strongest people you know didn't become strong accidentally. They built themselves under pressure. They embraced repetition. They tolerated boredom. They pushed through resistance. They finished what they started. Not because they enjoyed pain, but because they understood something. Comfort is addictive, and addiction shrinks you. The more you rely on comfort, the less capable you become without it. Think about this. When was the last time you did something uncomfortable on purpose? Not forced. Chosen. Cold shower. Hard workout. Focused work session. Saying no. Having the honest conversation. Discomfort is a training ground. It teaches you that you can handle more than you think. But if you never test yourself, you never expand. And expansion is growth. Weakness isn't just physical. It's mental. It's the inability to tolerate boredom. The inability to delay gratification. The inability to sit with your own thoughts. The inability to commit without constant stimulation. Comfort has shortened attention spans, lowered standards, reduced endurance. You feel tired, but you haven't pushed yourself. You feel stressed, but you haven't focused deeply. You feel overwhelmed, but you haven't built structure. Because structure feels restrictive, and comfort feels free. But freedom without discipline is chaos. Real strength is built in controlled discomfort. Waking up when you don't want to. Working when you'd rather scroll. Training when you feel lazy. Finishing when it's boring. And here's the irony. Discomfort builds confidence. Because every time you do something hard, you send a message to yourself. I can handle this. Confidence isn't positive thinking. It's evidence. Evidence built through friction. Comfort gives you no evidence. Only relief. Temporary relief. And relief doesn't build identity. Effort does. Ask yourself honestly, are you designing your life around comfort or around growth? Because the two are rarely aligned. If you constantly choose the easier path, your future narrows. If you choose the harder path strategically, your capacity expands. This doesn't mean you eliminate all comfort. It means you stop worshiping it. Comfort should be recovery, not default. You earn comfort. You don't live inside it. The problem isn't that you enjoy comfort. The problem is that you've made it your baseline. And baseline comfort leads to baseline results. If you want above average strength, above average discipline, above average resilience, you must tolerate above average discomfort. That's the trade. There is no shortcut. There is no hack. There is no secret mindset shift. There is repeated voluntary discomfort, chosen daily, small, consistent challenges. Build your body under resistance. Build your mind under focus. Build your character under pressure. And suddenly, life doesn't feel overwhelming anymore. Because you've trained for it. Comfort makes you fragile. Discomfort makes you durable. And durability is power. You don't need to suffer endlessly. You need to stretch regularly. Push slightly beyond your current limit. Then rest. Then push again. That cycle builds strength. Comfort alone builds dependency. So the next time you feel the urge to choose the easier option, pause. Ask yourself, is this recovery or is this avoidance? Because one restores you, the other weakens you. Comfort is not evil, but it is dangerous when unchecked. And in a world designed to keep you comfortable, strength becomes a choice. Choose wisely. Built beyond comfort. Growth begins where comfort ends. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. Discipline is one of the most misunderstood words in modern culture. People think discipline is about willpower. They think it's about waking up at 5 a.m. cold showers, motivational speeches, grinding through pain. But that's not discipline. That's performance. The brutal truth about discipline is that it has nothing to do with motivation and almost everything to do with identity. Most people say they lack discipline, but what they actually lack is alignment between who they think they are and how they actually behave. You don't struggle with discipline. You struggle with self-negotiation. Every morning, there's a conversation in your head. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. I'm too tired. And every time you win that negotiation against yourself, you lose long-term. Discipline is not about intensity. It's about consistency. It's about consistency under emotional resistance. Let me explain something uncomfortable. You don't fail because things are hard. You fail because discomfort feels unfamiliar. Your brain is designed to conserve energy, to avoid pain, to seek reward. And modern life has made reward instant. Entertainment is instant. Validation is instant. Comfort is instant. But progress? Progress is delayed. And discipline is the ability to choose delayed reward over instant relief. Most people can't tolerate that gap, that silent space between effort and visible results. That's where discipline lives. In the invisible, in the boring, in the repetition. If you only work hard when you feel inspired, you're not disciplined. You're dependent. Dependent on mood. Dependent on emotion. Dependent on external stimulation. And moods are unstable. Emotions fluctuate. That's why people start strong and disappear quietly. Discipline is not dramatic. It's quiet. It's repetitive. John. It's often unimpressive. It doesn't look like transformation. It looks like routine. And routine feels boring. John. But boring is powerful because boring compounds. You don't build strength in one workout. You build it through hundreds of ordinary sessions. John. You don't build wealth in one breakthrough. You build it through repeated smart decisions. You don't build confidence from one victory. John. You build it from repeated self-trust. And that's what discipline really is. Self-trust. The ability to make a promise to yourself and keep it. John. Especially when no one is watching. Especially when there is no applause. Especially when results are invisible. The brutal truth, John. Most people don't trust themselves. They've broken too many promises internally. I'll start Monday. I'll wake up early. I'll stop procrastinating. Dawn. And when those promises break, so does identity. And identity determines behavior. If you see yourself as someone inconsistent, you'll act inconsistent. John. If you see yourself as someone who quits, you'll quit faster. Discipline is not something you force. It's something you build through evidence. John. Small promises. Kept repeatedly. Not extreme. Not heroic. Consistent. Let's remove the fantasy. Discipline is not about being special. John. It's about reducing choices. High performers don't debate every decision. They eliminate negotiation. They remove friction, John. They structure their environment. They design their day so that discipline becomes automatic. Here's what most people do instead. They rely on willpower, John. And willpower is finite. If your environment is chaotic, if your phone is always nearby, if your habits are undefined, you will lose to impulse. Every time, Don. Because impulse is fast, discipline is slow, and slow loses in chaotic systems. The brutal truth is this: if your life lacks structure, you will lack discipline, John. Structure creates freedom, not restriction. But modern culture sells the opposite. Be free. Do what you feel. Follow your mood. That advice sounds empowering, John. But it creates fragility, because feelings change daily. And if your standards change with your feelings, you have no stability. Discipline creates stability, John. It reduces emotional volatility. It builds internal control, and control builds confidence. Now here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Discipline is painful in the beginning, John. Not physically, psychologically, because it forces you to confront your excuses. It exposes your patterns. It removes the fantasy version of yourself, John, and replaces it with reality. And reality doesn't care about intention. It cares about action. You can want success. You can dream about success, John. You can visualize success. But without disciplined execution, nothing moves. Let's simplify it. Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want now, John. That's it. Every day, repeated. And repetition rewires identity. Once you see yourself as disciplined, it becomes easier. Because now you're protecting an identity, John, not chasing motivation. That's the shift. You don't wait to feel disciplined. You act disciplined, and identity catches up. The brutal truth? There is no secret, John. There is no hidden hack. There is no magical mindset trick. There is repetition. There is structure. There is self-honesty, and the decision to stop negotiating with weakness, John. And here's something even more uncomfortable. If you truly committed to discipline, your life would change within months, not years, months. Consistent action outpaces talent, John. It outpaces intelligence. It outpaces luck. Discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. Subscribe for more truths. Comfort is the enemy, John. You think you're burned out. You tell yourself you're exhausted, overwhelmed, mentally drained. But what if that's not true? What if you're not burned out? You're just distracted. There's a difference. Burnout comes from sustained effort, from intensity, from pushing your limits for too long. But most people today aren't exhausted from effort. They're exhausted from fragmentation. Constant notifications, constant switching, constant stimulation. Your brain isn't tired from deep work. It's tired from shallow noise. Let's be honest. How many hours a day do you spend truly focused? No phone, no switching tabs. And here's the uncomfortable part. You don't feel burned out because you're doing too much. You feel burned out because you're doing too little, badly. Half work, half scrolling, half attention, half commitment. Your mind never fully locks into one task long enough to experience momentum. And without momentum, everything feels heavier. Distraction destroys rhythm. And rhythm is what makes work feel effortless. When you're fully focused, time moves differently. But when you're constantly interrupted, your brain never settles. Every notification resets your cognitive load. Every scroll steals a little more attention. And attention is your most valuable resource. Modern life is built to fracture it. Social media, streaming platforms, news cycles, all competing for your focus. And when your focus is constantly hijacked, you mistake mental clutter for burnout. Let's define burnout properly. Burnout happens when you invest intense energy without recovery, but distraction drains energy without progress. That's the difference. You're tired, but you're not fulfilled. You're busy, but not productive. You're mentally stimulated, but not mentally satisfied. Because your brain craves depth. Humans are wired for immersion, for mastery, for progress you can feel. But distraction keeps you in surface-level engagement. And surface-level engagement never produces real reward. So your brain keeps searching for more stimulation. Scroll, flick, switch, repeat. And at the end of the day, you feel empty. There's another uncomfortable truth. Calling it burnout protects your ego. Because burnout sounds like overachievement. But distraction is harder to admit. Because it implies lack of control. It implies, I let everything pull me away. But the solution to burnout and the solution to distraction are completely different. If you're burned out, you need recovery. If you're distracted, you need structure. You don't need a vacation. You need boundaries. You don't need less responsibility. You need fewer inputs. You don't need more rest. You need deeper focus. Let's talk practically. When was the last time you worked for 60 uninterrupted minutes? No phone, no checking messages. Just one problem. Most people can't do it. Not because they're incapable, but because they've trained their brain to expect interruption. You've conditioned yourself to crave novelty, and novelty kills endurance. Focus is like a muscle. If you constantly break sets, it never grows. And stamina is what protects you from real burnout. There's something powerful about finishing what you start, about entering flow, about staying with discomfort long enough for it to become progress. But distraction keeps you escaping discomfort instantly. You feel slight friction, you check your phone, you feel resistance, you open another tab. And over time, your tolerance for effort shrinks. Not because you're weak, but because you're untrained. And that untrained mind interprets effort as exhaustion. So here's the real question. Are you truly burned out? Or have you simply lost the ability to focus? Because if it's distraction, that's good news. It means you're not broken. You're just undisciplined with your attention. And attention can be rebuilt. Start small. 1 hour of deep work per day. Phone in another room. Notifications off. Single task. No negotiation. You will feel uncomfortable, restless, impatient, tempted to check something. That's not burnout. That's withdrawal. Withdrawal from constant stimulation. Push through it. On the other side of distraction is clarity. On the other side of clarity is momentum. And momentum feels energizing. That's the irony. Deep focus doesn't drain you. It strengthens you. Because progress restores energy. Fragmentation destroys it. So before you say you're burned out, audit your distractions. Track how often you switch tasks. Count how many times you check your phone. Measure your true, focused minutes. You might discover something uncomfortable. You're not exhausted from effort. You're exhausted from avoidance. And avoidance is subtle. It hides inside multitasking. It hides inside quick checks. It hides inside constant low-level stimulation. But once you remove it, work becomes lighter. Not easier. Lighter. Because your mind is no longer fighting itself. And avoidance is subtle. It hides inside multitasking. It hides inside quick checks. It hides inside constant low-level stimulation. And protecting your attention is protecting your future. So no, you're not burned out. You're distracted. And distraction is a choice. Growth demands depth. Comfort is the enemy. You're not stuck, and I know that's not what you want to hear. It's easier to believe that your life hasn't changed because of bad timing, bad luck, or difficult circumstances. It feels more comfortable to think something external is holding you back. But if that were true, your standards wouldn't quietly drop every time things get uncomfortable. And that's what's really happening. You don't feel stuck because nothing is possible. You feel stuck because you've slowly adjusted your standards to match your comfort. That's a hard realization because stuck sounds temporary, low standards sound personal, but look at your life honestly. Your results don't reflect your potential. They reflect what you tolerate, and tolerance is the real trap. Most people don't wake up one day and decide to lower their standards. It happens gradually. You skip one workout, you delay one task. None of it feels dramatic, but over time, those small compromises redefine what's acceptable, and what's acceptable becomes your new normal. You say you want success, but you tolerate distraction. Every tolerated weakness becomes part of your identity. This is where most people misunderstand growth. They think they need more motivation, but breakthroughs are rare. Standards are daily. High performers aren't extraordinary because they feel different. They're extraordinary because they refuse to accept certain behaviors from themselves. They decide that missing commitments isn't an option. They decide that effort is non-negotiable. Not perfectly, but consistently. So, we have to audit the baseline. Most people don't know where their standards actually sit until they look at the last 24 hours of their life. Your life is a sequence of micro-negotiations. Every time you make a choice, you are either reinforcing a high standard or submitting to a low one. The internal voice that says, just this once, is the architect of your failure. It sounds like logic, but it's actually a plea for comfort. Don't negotiate, just act. Leniency is a debt you can't pay back. Every time you let yourself off the hook, you lose a piece of your self-respect. You are telling yourself that your word means nothing. And that's the danger, because your identity isn't what you say you'll do. It's what you actually tolerate from yourself. If you tolerate average, you are average. Your environment is a reflection of your internal standard. Look around. Does your space command excellence, or does it invite distraction? You can't build a high-standard life in a low-standard room. Modern society is designed to reward the bare minimum. It wants you comfortable. It wants you compliant. You have to actively opt out of the default settings of this world. Growth is supposed to hurt. It requires friction. If there is no resistance, there is no development. You have to learn to love the weight of your own potential. Start today. Review every action of the last 24 hours. Did it meet the standard of the person you say you want to be? If not, it has to go. No excuses. Self-reliance isn't just about survival. It's about being able to count on yourself when things get difficult. It's about being the person who doesn't break when the pressure builds. Consistency isn't a flash of brilliance. It's the boring, repetitive work of keeping the standard when nobody is watching. That is where true power is forged. You carry the weight of everything you could be. Don't let that potential rot because you were too scared of a little discomfort. Raise the bar and carry the weight. There are two kinds of pain, the pain of growth and the pain of regret. One leads to destiny, the other leads to a slow death of the soul. Choose wisely. The moment you stop tolerating average is the moment your life truly begins. Everything else was just preparation for this decision. You're not stuck, you've just been too lenient. Grace is for recovery, standards are for execution. Stop blurring the lines. Momentum is a byproduct of discipline. You don't wait for it. You build it brick by brick, standard by standard, every single day. A standard so clear that your emotions don't get a vote. That's the goal. When you don't feel like it, the standard does the work for you. That is freedom. There is a gap between who you are and who you want to be. Comfort is the bridge that collapses. Standards are the foundation that holds. Small compromises shape identity, and identity shapes destiny. Don't let a small compromise turn into a life of what if. Protect your standards like your life depends on it, because it does. Wake up when you said you would. Finish what you start, limit your distractions. These are not dramatic, they are controlled upgrades, and upgrades change trajectories. You need to stop accepting behaviors that contradict your goals. If you say you want peace but tolerate chaos, you are lying to yourself. Stop the lie. Raise the standard. It's not about intensity. It's about clarity, and clarity creates strength. When you are clear about what you won't tolerate, you are powerful, unstoppable. You're not behind. You're not incapable. You're not doomed. You've just allowed too much, and allowing too much creates average outcomes. Average is the enemy. You can change that immediately by raising your internal standards. Not tomorrow, not next week. The moment you decide that average is beneath you, everything changes. Stop asking, do I feel like it? And start asking, does this meet my standard? That question is the filter that removes the noise and leaves only the growth. You're not stuck. You're under-demanding. Demand more. Calmly, consistently, deliberately. Your life will begin to respond in ways you never thought possible. It won't happen instantly, but it will happen inevitably. Because once the standard is raised, the person you used to be is gone. You are now the person who demands excellence. Built beyond comfort. Growth begins where comfort ends. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. We are just getting started. I'll see you in the next one. Keep the standard. Build beyond comfort. Subscribe now. You don't hate your life. If you did, you would change it. What you actually hate are your habits. That feeling of frustration you carry around, the quiet disappointment, the sense that something isn't right, it doesn't come from your entire existence. It comes from your daily patterns, because your life is not one big event. It's a collection of repeated behaviors, and behaviors become habits. Habits become identity, and identity becomes your reality. When you say, I hate my life, what you usually mean is this. You hate waking up tired. You hate feeling behind. You hate scrolling instead of progressing. You hate breaking promises to yourself. You hate knowing you could do more, but not doing it. That's not life, that's habit. And habits are adjustable. But here's the uncomfortable truth. It's easier to blame your life than to confront your routines. Because if your life is the problem, it feels overwhelming. But if your habits are the problem, that's personal. That means you have control. And control comes with responsibility. Most people don't wake up and consciously design bad habits. They drift into them, small compromises, a skipped workout, an extra hour of scrolling. None of these feel destructive in the moment, but habits compound, just like discipline compounds. Your current life is not random. It's a reflection of what you repeatedly do. If you repeatedly choose distraction, you build a distracted life. If you repeatedly choose avoidance, you build a stagnant life. If you repeatedly choose comfort, you build limitation. And then one day, you look around and think, this isn't what I wanted. But you didn't build it in a day. You built it through repetition. The good news is this: if habits built your frustration, habits can rebuild your confidence. You don't need a new life. You need new patterns. Let's be honest. You don't hate your job. You hate how you show up to it. You don't hate your body. You hate how inconsistently you treat it. You don't hate your future. You hate the daily actions that don't support it. That's empowering, not depressing, because habits are controllable. They're trainable. But they require one thing most people resist: structure. Structure feels restrictive at first, but structure creates freedom long term. If your mornings are chaotic, your life feels chaotic. If your attention is scattered, your progress is scattered. There's a pattern behind your frustration, and patterns can be redesigned. The reason habits are so powerful is simple. They remove decision fatigue. Feelings fluctuate, habits anchor. Right now, you may feel stuck, but instead of asking, why is my life like this? Ask, what am I repeating daily? That question changes everything, because repetition builds reality. If you change what you repeat, you change what you experience. Not instantly, but inevitably. Start small. Don't attempt to rebuild your entire existence overnight. Choose one habit. 1. Improve your sleep routine. Protect one focused work block. Train consistently. Small upgrades shift identity, and identity shifts behavior. When you begin acting like someone disciplined, you start believing you are disciplined. When you begin protecting your time, you start valuing your future. Confidence is not a mindset trick. It's evidence built through consistent behavior. The reason you feel frustrated is because your behavior and your ambition are misaligned. Your standards say one thing. Your habits say another. That conflict creates tension. But once habits align with ambition, clarity replaces frustration. Momentum replaces regret. Energy replaces guilt. You don't need to escape your life. You need to redesign your days, because your days build your destiny. If you keep repeating the same behaviors, you will keep experiencing the same results. That's not fate, that's pattern, and patterns can be changed. Change the reinforcement, change the repetition, change the outcome. Built beyond comfort. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. You're not lazy. If you were truly lazy, you wouldn't feel guilty. You wouldn't feel frustrated. You wouldn't feel that quiet pressure in your chest when you think about what you're avoiding. Lazy people don't overthink their inaction. You do, which means something else is happening. You're not lazy. You're avoiding something. Avoidance is far more common than laziness, and far more dangerous, because laziness sounds permanent. Avoidance is psychological. It has a cause, and causes can be addressed. Most of the time, what you call laziness is actually resistance. Resistance to discomfort, resistance to uncertainty, resistance to potential failure. You don't avoid tasks because you don't care. You avoid them because they threaten something. Your ego, your identity, your self-image. Let's be honest. That project you keep delaying, it's not hard. It's exposing. It forces you to measure your ability. That workout you keep postponing, it's not impossible, it's confronting, it forces you to face your current condition. That conversation you keep avoiding, it's not complicated, it's uncomfortable. It forces you to risk rejection. Avoidance is protection. Your brain is trying to protect you from emotional discomfort. And it does it cleverly. It labels the behavior as, I'm just tired, or I'm not motivated, or I'll do it tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes, because the real issue isn't energy, it's fear. Fear of not being good enough, fear of discovering your limits, fear of being judged, fear of trying and failing. So instead of risking pain, you choose delay. And delay feels safe, temporarily. But avoidance compounds, just like habits. Every time you delay something important, your self-trust decreases. And when self-trust decreases, confidence follows. Then you say, maybe I am lazy. But you're not lazy, you're protecting yourself. The problem is, protection without progress creates stagnation, and stagnation feels like weakness. The irony is this: the task you're avoiding is usually the one that would build the most growth. Because it's tied to expansion, expansion of skill, expansion of identity, expansion of standards. Avoidance keeps you inside your current version. Growth requires stepping beyond it. That's why it feels threatening. You don't avoid small things. You avoid meaningful things. Nobody procrastinates brushing their teeth. You procrastinate writing the proposal, launching the project, improving your health, making the decision. Because those things matter, and when something matters, it carries risk. But here's the truth. Avoidance does not eliminate risk. It guarantees regret. When you avoid something repeatedly, you send yourself a message. I can't handle this. And over time, that message becomes belief. But when you face something uncomfortable, even imperfectly, you send a different message. I can handle difficulty. And that builds strength. Strength isn't built by doing easy things consistently. It's built by confronting what you're tempted to avoid. The first step isn't massive action. It's honesty. Ask yourself, what am I really avoiding? Not the surface excuse, the real reason. Are you afraid you'll fail? Are you afraid you'll succeed and have to maintain it? Are you afraid of responsibility? Are you afraid of being seen? Clarity dissolves avoidance. Once you name the fear, it loses power. Then you reduce the task. Make it smaller, not easier, smaller. Start the document. Write one paragraph. Walk for 10 minutes. Send the message. Avoidance thrives in ambiguity. Action thrives in clarity. You don't need motivation, you need movement. Even imperfect movement, because action interrupts the fear cycle. And fear shrinks when confronted. You're not lazy, you're human. But if you continue labeling yourself as lazy, you accept stagnation. If you recognize avoidance, you regain control. Avoidance is a habit, and habits can be retrained. Start with the thing you've been postponing the longest. Not dramatically, deliberately. Face it calmly. Let discomfort exist. Stay with it. That's where growth begins. You don't need to overhaul your personality. You need to build tolerance for discomfort, and discomfort is the gateway to progress. Built beyond comfort, growth begins where comfort ends. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. Motivation feels powerful. When it's there, everything feels possible. You wake up energized, you make plans, you commit, you feel unstoppable. It's that surge of adrenaline that makes the impossible seem reachable. But we need to talk about the dark side of that feeling, because it's often the very thing holding you back from your true potential. You've been sold a dream that is actually a cage built of your own fleeting feelings and chemical surges. You are waiting for a ghost to guide you. And then it fades. That intensity you felt on Monday morning, it's gone by Wednesday. That's not a character flaw, that's biology. Motivation is emotional, and emotions are designed to fluctuate. They are survival mechanisms, not long-term strategy tools. Yet most people build their entire lives around a feeling that isn't designed to last. You are building your future on shifting sands, wondering why the walls keep collapsing every time the mood shifts. You cannot rely on a weather pattern to build a monument. Your brain is wired for efficiency, not excellence. It wants the hit of dopamine that comes with the idea of progress, but it recoils from the friction of actual work. This is the dopamine debt. When you wait for motivation, you are essentially waiting for a chemical permission slip. But progress doesn't wait for permission. It requires you to override your biology and choose the path of most resistance. That is the only place where growth exists. If you only move when it feels good, you will never move far. You are trading your destiny for a chemical high. Think of motivation as a spark. It's useful for starting the fire, but it's completely unstable. And you cannot build a life of consistency on an unstable foundation. Every time you wait for the feeling to act, you are reinforcing a dangerous dependency on a lie. You are training yourself to be a slave to your moods instead of a master of your systems. You are choosing the flickering spark over the enduring flame. Stability is what builds empires, not excitement. Excitement is cheap, stability is rare. How many times have you felt motivated to change your life, to start working out, to wake up earlier, to launch that project? And how many times did that intensity disappear within days? The problem isn't your desire or your ambition, it's the design of your execution. You've been taught to wait until you feel ready. But ready is a phantom. It never truly arrives when you need it most. Readiness is just procrastination in a suit, whispering lies to keep you comfortable while your goals wither. Progress doesn't require readiness. It requires structure. High performers don't wake up asking, "Do I feel motivated today?" They don't check their emotional pulse before they start their work. They ask a much simpler question: what is scheduled? That shift in perspective changes everything you know about success. It moves the focus from the internal feeling to the external system. It's the difference between hope and a plan. Hope is a gamble. A plan is a commitment. Structure is the only antidote to chaos. You become consistent by reducing decision-making. Most people struggle because every action feels optional, and optional actions require emotional negotiation. This is the tax of decision. Every time you have to decide to work out, you drain your energy before you even begin. When something is non-negotiable, your energy is preserved for the work itself, not the debate about doing it. Negotiation is the enemy of action. Stop talking to yourself and start following the plan. The more choices you make, the less progress you have. Remove the option. There is a high price for staying in the zone of comfort. Every time you choose the easy road because you don't feel like taking the hard one, you are paying with your future self. You are stealing from the person you are supposed to become. Consistency is built in the moments where you want to quit, but don't. It's built in the cold, the dark, and the silence. If you only move when the sun is out, you will never reach the horizon. Growth begins where comfort ends. What are you willing to pay? That's how consistency is built, not through hype, but through the removal of choice. Every time you negotiate with your feelings, you lose. You are choosing comfort over growth. But when you remove the choice, you find a level of focus you didn't know you had. You become the lighthouse, not the wave. You become unshakable in your intent. This is the foundation of the built beyond comfort mindset. It's not a feeling, it's a stance against the mediocrity of your own moods. This is just the beginning. We've dismantled the lie of motivation. In part 2, we're going to build the system that actually replaces it. We'll dive into the clarity problem and how to design behaviors that stick even when the fire goes out. Growth begins where comfort ends. Built beyond comfort. I'll see you in the next lesson. Are you ready to stop waiting and start building? Join the arena. Welcome back. Now here's the uncomfortable truth you need to hear. If you constantly need motivation to act, you don't have a motivation problem. You have a clarity problem. You don't know exactly what your system is. You don't have defined behaviors or clear boundaries. You are relying on emotion because you lack a map, and emotion will always betray you. The irony is this: the less you rely on motivation, the more progress you make. And the more progress you make, the more natural motivation becomes. Real motivation is a byproduct of movement, not the cause of it. When you move first, momentum builds. Progress feels rewarding, and that reward is what fuels further action. Not a quote, not a speech. Movement. If you're stuck in procrastination, waiting to feel inspired, you will remain inconsistent forever. You don't need more hype. You need a system, a repeatable structure that functions even when you don't feel like it. That's the difference between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs act when they're inspired. Professionals act because it's Tuesday at 8 a.m. And once you internalize that, everything shifts. You stop blaming yourself for fluctuating emotions. You stop labeling yourself as lazy and realize you were just systemless. You stop waiting for the perfect mood and start building the perfect structure, because structure is what actually creates the freedom you're looking for. It's the path to real results. If you struggle with procrastination, I built something specifically to solve this. It's called the Motivation Blueprint. It's not about hype. It's about rewiring how you approach action. We teach you how to design systems so you never have to chase a feeling again. Consistency isn't a superpower, it's a design choice. Link is in the description if you're ready to go deeper. Whether you join us or not, remember this: motivation is a spark, discipline is a system, and in the long run, systems always win. Don't wait for the spark, build the system. Growth begins where comfort ends, built beyond comfort. I'll see you in the arena. Most people believe they're behind in life, behind their friends, behind their goals, behind where they thought they would be by now. They look at successful people online and think, I'm too late. But the truth is something completely different. You're not behind, you're distracted. And until you understand this, your life will keep feeling stuck. The idea that you're behind in life is mostly an illusion, because there is no universal timeline, there is no global clock. But modern life constantly pushes that narrative. Social media shows you people who seem younger, richer, more successful, You see someone who built a business at 23, someone who bought a house at 28, and suddenly you feel like you're failing, but you're not behind. You're comparing your real life to someone else's highlight reel. The real problem is not time. The real problem is attention. Most people today are not lacking intelligence. They're lacking focus. Their attention is constantly being pulled in 100 different directions. Notifications, endless scrolling. When your attention is fragmented, your progress disappears. Distraction is incredibly expensive, not financially, but mentally. Every scroll session trains your brain to seek quick dopamine. Slowly, without realizing it, you lose the ability to focus on anything meaningful. You start things, but you don't finish them. Many people think they lack discipline, but often the real issue is something else. Their environment is designed to destroy focus. Your phone is engineered to keep you scrolling. Apps are engineered to keep you watching. Algorithms are engineered to keep you engaged. Because your attention is the most valuable currency in the modern world. If you constantly feel distracted, that's not an accident. That's the system working exactly as designed. But here's the advantage you have. Focus is now extremely rare. And rare skills become powerful. If you can sit down and focus deeply for 2 hours, you're already ahead of most people. They start a task, and suddenly they're watching videos. They sit down to work and respond to notifications. That's not productivity, that's reaction. Focus is not something you wait for. Focus is something you train, just like discipline, just like strength, just like endurance. When you resist that impulse, something powerful happens. Your thinking becomes clearer, and your progress becomes visible. There is a simple rule most successful people follow. They spend most of their time on a few important things, instead of reacting to every distraction. The uncomfortable truth is this. Most people are stuck because their attention is scattered. They are busy, but not productive. They are rarely doing the things that matter. Your life begins to change the moment you protect your attention. You remove distractions. You focus your energy. Progress becomes possible. If you want more honest conversations about discipline, subscribe to Built Beyond Comfort. Because comfort keeps you distracted, but discipline builds the life you actually want. Your phone is not a tool, it's a battlefield. Every time you pick it up, thousands of the world's smartest engineers are fighting for one thing, your attention. These apps are designed like casinos. The bright colors, the pull to refresh, the infinite scroll, it's all engineered to exploit the flaws in your human biology. They've hacked your brain's reward system. They've turned your focus into a slot machine, feeding you tiny hits of dopamine to keep you scrolling while your life stands still. The reason you check your phone every 5 minutes isn't because you're busy. It's because your brain is hunting for a variable reward, a like, a comment, a message. You're a lab rat in a digital maze. If the app is free, you aren't the customer. You are the product. Your time, your energy, and your potential are being sold to the highest bidder every single second. Most people confuse being busy with being productive. You can spend 12 hours a day reacting to notifications and feel exhausted, but you haven't moved an inch closer to your goals. That's not work. That's a trap. Every time you just check a notification, you pay a context-switching debt. It takes your brain an average of 23 minutes to return to deep focus. You aren't multitasking. You're just failing at multiple things at once. Your brain wasn't built for this fragmentation. When you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing of value. You lose the ability to think deeply, to solve hard problems, and to grow. Because comfort is the enemy of progress. It's easier to scroll than to build. It's easier to watch someone else's success than to create your own. But growth begins where comfort ends. The modern world has killed boredom, but boredom is where creativity is born. If you can't sit in a room alone for 10 minutes without reaching for your phone, you've already lost the war. Deep work is becoming the most valuable skill in the 21st century. If you can reclaim your focus, you aren't just catching up, you are leaping ahead of the distracted 99%. In an economy of distraction, the person who can focus is the king. It is the single greatest competitive advantage you can develop. It is the key to everything you want to build. You don't need more willpower. You need a better environment. You need to remove the triggers, kill the notifications, and build a system that works for you, not against you. This is why I built the Motivation Blueprint. It's a tactical system designed to weaponize your focus and make progress inevitable. It's for those ready to stop being distracted and start building. The world wants you distracted. I want you focused. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. We're just getting started. Most people are stuck because they are trying to do everything. They have 50 goals and 100 interests. They are moving an inch in 1,000 different directions. That's not progress. That's vibration. The 90% rule is simple. 90% of what you do is noise. Only 10% actually moves the needle. Your job isn't to work harder. It's to identify the 10% and discard everything else. We use busyness as a shield. If we're always doing something, we don't have to confront the fact that we're not getting anywhere. Busy is easy. Focused is hard. Activity is a distraction from achievement. But saying no is uncomfortable. We've been trained to seek the comfort of consensus and yes. But every yes to something trivial is a no to something vital. You are leaking your potential through 1,000 small holes. Success is achieved through elimination, not addition. You don't need a new strategy. You need fewer priorities. When you narrow your focus to one singular path, you become dangerous. You become unstoppable. Execution is not about intensity for one day. It's about consistency for 1 year. Most people overestimate what they can do in a month, but they completely underestimate what they can do in a year of focused execution. If you want to be in the top 1%, you have to start saying no to things the 99% say yes to. No to the distractions. No to the shallow entertainment. No to the comfort of the middle ground. It's comfortable to have many options. It's uncomfortable to burn the bridges and focus on one thing. But remember, growth begins where comfort ends. Comfort is the enemy. When you stop reacting to every shiny object, your focus begins to compound. Your thinking becomes deeper. Your work becomes better. And suddenly, those results that looked impossible start to arrive. That is the 90% rule in action. Audit your last 24 hours. How much of it was spent on your top 10%? If the answer is not much, then you're not behind. You're just drowning in the noise. It's time to cut the dead weight. In an age of shallow distraction, the ability to do deep, focused work is a superpower. While everyone else is skimming the surface, you are diving deep. That is where the value is created. That is where you win. If you're tired of the noise and ready to execute, this is exactly why I built the Motivation Blueprint. It's the system for those who are done being distracted and are ready to be dangerous. It's time to build your focus. Reclaim your focus, reclaim your life. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. We're just getting started. We've talked about the distraction and the 90% rule. But to win, you need one more thing, a total mindset rebuild. You need to stop playing the short game and start playing the long game. Motivation is a feeling. Systems are a structure. Feelings fade when things get hard. Structures hold you up when you want to quit. Successful people don't wait to feel like working. They have a system that makes work inevitable. The long game is boring. It's unglamorous. It's doing the same 10% every single day while the world is chasing the next shiny distraction. But the long game is the only game where the wins are permanent. In a world of instant gratification, patience is a weapon. Most people quit because they don't see results in 30 days. They don't realize that the first 90% of the work produces the last 10% of the results. Stop saying you want to be focused. Start saying you are focused. When your identity changes, your actions follow. You aren't someone trying to avoid distraction. You are someone who doesn't value it. Every time you reach for your phone, ask yourself, am I seeking progress or am I seeking comfort? If it's comfort, put it down. Remember, growth begins where comfort ends. Comfort is the enemy. Every second you spend distracted is a tax on your future self. You are paying for temporary dopamine with your permanent potential. It is the most expensive trade you will ever make. Stop paying the tax. Build a wall around your focus. Guard it like your life depends on it, because the quality of your life depends on the quality of your attention. If you control your focus, you control your destiny. You are not behind in life. You never were. You were just distracted. The moment you reclaim your focus, the timeline resets. You can achieve in 1 year what takes the distracted world 10. I've spent years building the systems to kill distraction. I've put all of it into the motivation blueprint. This isn't just a course, it's the operating system for a high-performance life. It's time to weaponize your mind. If you're ready to stop making excuses and start making progress, join the motivation blueprint today. Stop being the product. Start being the architect. The link is below. This is the end of the series, but it's the beginning of your new life. Stay focused, stay uncomfortable. Subscribe to Built Beyond Comfort if you're ready for the truth every single week. Because comfort is the enemy. Growth begins where comfort ends. Subscribe now. I'll see you in the next one. Most people spend their entire lives waiting. They are constantly waiting for motivation, waiting for the perfect time, waiting for more confidence, waiting for life to somehow change. But here's the brutal truth. Your life will not change until you accept something most people refuse to accept. And the moment you truly understand this, everything about how you live will change. Most people believe life is supposed to feel easy. They think successful people are just more motivated, more talented, more lucky. But that's not what separates successful people from everyone else. The real difference is much simpler. Successful people accept something most people spend their entire lives denying. They accept that life is hard by default. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. There will always be resistance. There will always be discomfort. There will always be days when you don't feel like doing the work. And the moment you stop expecting life to be easy, you stop being surprised by difficulty. And when difficulty stops surprising you, it stops controlling you. There is another uncomfortable truth. Nobody is responsible for fixing your life. Not your parents, not your boss, not your partner, not the government, not society. And that can feel harsh, but it is also incredibly freeing. Because the moment you realize nobody is coming to rescue you, you stop waiting. You stop hoping, you stop blaming, and you start building. Most people stay stuck for one simple reason. They refuse to accept responsibility. They blame their job, they blame their childhood, they blame their circumstances, they blame the economy. But responsibility is not about blame. Responsibility is about power. The moment you say, my life is my responsibility, you gain control again. Because if your life is someone else's responsibility, you're powerless. But if your life is your responsibility, you can change it. Comfort is the most dangerous trap in modern life. Comfort feels safe. Comfort feels relaxing. Comfort feels good in the moment. But comfort slowly destroys ambition. Because growth requires friction. Growth requires effort. Growth requires doing things you don't feel like doing. And the more you train your brain to choose comfort, the harder discipline becomes. That's why the most successful people in the world don't chase comfort. They train themselves to tolerate discomfort. They work when they don't feel like it. They show up when motivation disappears. They keep moving when things get hard. Discipline is not about being perfect. Discipline is about consistency. It's about showing up on the days you don't feel like it. It's about doing the work when nobody is watching. It's about choosing the long-term reward over the short-term escape. And here's the part nobody talks about. Discipline actually makes life easier because the pain of discipline is small compared to the pain of regret. Regret is much heavier. Regret is realizing you had potential, but never used it. Real change does not happen when you change your goals. Real change happens when you change your identity. When you stop saying, I want to be disciplined, and start saying, I am the kind of person who does hard things. When you stop saying, I hope I become successful, and start saying, I am building the life I want. Identity drives behavior, and behavior shapes your future. Your life right now is largely the result of the habits you repeat every day, your routines, your decisions, your standards. And the uncomfortable truth is this: if nothing changes, nothing changes. Your future will look very similar to your present, unless you decide to do something different. Every person who transforms their life eventually reaches the same moment, a moment where they stop negotiating with themselves, a moment where excuses stop working, a moment where they finally say, enough. Enough waiting, enough blaming, enough comfort. And from that moment forward, they start acting differently. Small actions, daily discipline, relentless consistency, and slowly, everything changes. Your life will not change overnight, but it can change faster than you think. Not because motivation suddenly appears, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you finally accept the truth. No one is coming to fix your life, and that's not bad news. That's the best news you could possibly hear, because it means your future is still in your hands. If this message hit you, then this channel is for you. because here we talk about the uncomfortable truths most people avoid. Truth about discipline, truth about success, truth about personal responsibility. So if you're serious about building a stronger mindset, subscribe to the channel. And remember, comfort will keep you safe, but it will never make you powerful. You're not overwhelmed, you're undisciplined. And I know that's not comfortable to hear. It feels better to say you have too much going on, too many responsibilities, too much pressure, too many expectations. But let's slow this down. Overwhelm isn't caused by volume, it's caused by lack of control. Two people can have the same workload. One feels focused, the other feels overwhelmed. Why? Because one has structure, the other has chaos. Overwhelm is often unstructured thinking, unclear priorities, open loops, constant distractions, no boundaries. And when your attention is scattered, everything feels heavy. You don't feel overwhelmed because there's too much to do. You feel overwhelmed because you don't know what to do first, so you avoid. You scroll, you procrastinate, you switch tasks, you half-finish things, and every unfinished task becomes mental noise. That noise builds pressure. That pressure feels like overwhelm, but it's not workload, it's disorder. Discipline is not about intensity, it's about clarity. It's deciding, this is what I'm doing right now, not 5 things, 1 thing. Overwhelm grows in ambiguity. Discipline grows in definition. If your day has no structure, your mind will try to process everything at once. And your brain is not built for that. Your brain is built for focus. But focus requires elimination. Most people don't eliminate, they accumulate. Tabs open, notifications on, tasks started, no clear shutdown time, no prioritization, just constant input. Of course you feel overwhelmed. You're overstimulated. There's a difference. Overstimulation feels like overwhelm, but the solution isn't less responsibility. It's more discipline. Discipline in what you consume, discipline in what you commit to, discipline in what you ignore. You don't need to do less. You need to decide more. Decide what matters. Decide what can wait. Decide what doesn't belong. Undisciplined attention creates emotional chaos. Disciplined attention creates calm. You think calm people have easier lives. They don't. They have clearer boundaries. Overwhelm often hides avoidance. You say, I have so much to do. But if we looked closely, we'd see something else. You don't want to choose. Because choosing eliminates alternatives, and eliminating alternatives feels risky. So you keep everything open, and everything open creates stress. Discipline closes loops, overwhelm keeps them open. If you want to reduce overwhelm, do something simple. Write everything down, all of it, then choose 3 things, not 10. 3. Do those. Finish them, then stop. That's discipline. It's not glamorous, it's controlled. Overwhelm is emotional, discipline is mechanical, and mechanical systems beat emotional states. Another uncomfortable truth. You don't feel overwhelmed when you're deeply focused. When you're locked into one task, time disappears. Stress decreases, energy stabilizes. That's not because the work is easy, it's because your mind isn't fragmented. Fragmentation feels heavy, unity feels powerful. Right now, your attention is fragmented, and fragmentation creates the illusion of being buried. But you're not buried, you're scattered. Scattered people feel overwhelmed. Structured people feel in control, even under pressure. Pressure is not the enemy. Lack of structure is. You can have high responsibility and low overwhelm. But you cannot have low discipline and low overwhelm. That's the trade. You want calm? Build structure. You want clarity? Eliminate distractions. You want energy? Stop switching tasks. Multitasking is anxiety disguised as productivity. Discipline is boring. Overwhelm is dramatic. But boring wins. Overwhelm is often self-created through undisciplined inputs. Too much media, too many opinions, too many commitments, too many open loops. You don't need a life reset. You need attention discipline. The moment you control your inputs and define your outputs, overwhelm shrinks. Because your brain stops guessing, it starts executing, and execution feels powerful. Overwhelm feels powerless. That's the real difference. If this felt uncomfortable, good. It means you're seeing something. You're not overwhelmed, you're unstructured, you're not buried, you're scattered. And scattered can be fixed, one decision at a time, one focus block at a time, one boundary at a time. Discipline doesn't remove pressure, it organizes it, and organized pressure builds strength. If this hit, subscribe. We don't build comfort here. We build control, built beyond comfort. Growth begins where comfort ends. Part 1 was about the why. Part 2 is about the how. You know you're undisciplined. Now, what are you going to do about it? Most people wait for a feeling. They wait for inspiration. They wait for the right time. But action doesn't follow a feeling. The feeling follows the action. Momentum isn't found. It's manufactured through movement. Discipline is the bridge between the life you have and the life you want. It's not about doing it when you're motivated. It's about doing it when you're not, especially when you're not. That is where the growth happens. Comfort is the enemy of progress. If you are comfortable, you are standing still, and standing still is dying. Let's talk about the mechanics of the start. Stop thinking about the whole mountain. Just look at the next step. If you have an impulse to act on a goal, you must physically move within 5 seconds or your brain will kill the idea. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. That's not a motivational quote. It's a survival mechanism for your productivity. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. A goal is a destination. A system is the engine. Stop worrying about the finish line. Start perfecting the process. The process is where the discipline lives. Repetition is the father of learning and the mother of discipline. Do it again and again until it becomes mechanical. Discipline is also about what you say no to. Every yes to a distraction is a no to your future self. Protect your time. Protect your attention. It is the only currency that actually matters. Clean the environment, remove the friction. If you want to be disciplined, make it easy to be disciplined. You have 2 choices, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Both are sacrifices. You just have to choose which one you can live with. Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. Don't carry that weight for the rest of your life. The climb is hard, the view from the top is worth it, but you'll never see it if you're too busy being overwhelmed. No more excuses, no more unclear priorities. Pick one thing, start now, not tomorrow, now. If you're ready to build control, subscribe. Growth begins where comfort ends, built beyond comfort. Action is the start, discipline is the bridge, but habit is the destination. Part 3 is about making excellence your default state. Most people fail because they confuse intensity with discipline. They go hard for 3 days and quit. Discipline isn't a sprint, it's a standard. Excellence is not a singular act. It's 1,000 small decisions made correctly, day after day, until they require no thought at all. To change your results, you must change your identity. Stop saying, "I'm trying to be disciplined." Start saying, "I am a disciplined person." Don't look for radical shifts. Look for 1% improvements. Compounded over time, 1% becomes an unrecognizable transformation. Water doesn't carve stone through power. It carves stone through persistence. Be the water. Trust the process. When discipline becomes a habit, it no longer feels heavy. It feels like freedom. The freedom from having to negotiate with yourself every single morning. Your life is a reflection of the standards you tolerate. If you tolerate chaos, you get overwhelmed. If you tolerate only excellence, you get control. You aren't undisciplined because you're weak. You're undisciplined because you haven't decided who you want to be yet. Make the decision. This is the end of the series, but the beginning of your work. You have the tools. Now go execute. Built beyond comfort. Subscribe if you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. Growth begins where comfort ends. Comfort is the enemy.